everyone, and welcome to Herding Hamsters 101, a practical approach to governance in teams. My name is DRC Hess, and welcome to the Galactic Summit 2020. A little bit about me. I am an Office Apps and Services MVP, as well as a Senior Cloud Architect for Cloudway. If you're watching the session, please feel free to tweet about it. I'd love to hear any feedback that you have. If you'd like more information, have any questions, you can reach me through email, my blog, or even through LinkedIn or Twitter. I'd be happy to hear from you and help you with anything that you might need. So let's get started. One of the first things that we need to know when it comes to governance is that governance is a process. And it is an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. What it really evolves around is the ability to help empower users to get their jobs done without actually having to say no all the time. We want to make sure that they don't hurt the organization or risk security or compliance, but that they can get everything that they need to without the consistent roadblocks that they may have encountered in the past. So what are some of the things that we need to ask when we're looking to implement governance in our team's environments? The first thing that we should be asking is who should be in what role. You're going to have everything about, administrators or owners or members or external or internal guest users. And we'll talk a little bit about what each of those roles entail and some of the responsibilities to help you make the right decision and who goes in what role of those. Another one is naming conventions. One of the biggest things regarding our former intranets that we had in SharePoint, and that also carries back over to Teams, is the importance of naming conventions. Can people find things when they're looking for them? Should departments always have a consistent name like, finance or finance department? One thing that you should really remember is that when you do think of your naming conventions, some of the limitations regarding team names and teams are that you cannot start a team name with an underscore or period. You also cannot end a team name with a period. So just a couple things to keep in mind when you're thinking about naming conventions, and how it will also come back in search is really important. One of the other things we want to think about is what kind of provisioning are you going to want to allow within your organization? Are you going to allow self-service where users can create and provision their own teams whenever they need? Or are you thinking in IT-led provisioning where you have a process of request back to IT, and then IT will go and then provision that team and assign members to it? Each one is a little bit different for every organization, so we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of each of these. One of the other options to consider is what kind of apps you're going to allow access to your team's environment. And when I mean apps, everyone wants to go directly to those third-party apps. Like, do I want to integrate ServiceNow, or do I want to talk about Poly, or do I want to talk about some of the other ones that are available through the store? I want you to remember that there are apps that are available through Office that are vital to the success of your organization, such as, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, maybe Microsoft Forms. These are apps for teams that you want to make sure that you do enable, even if you are making sure that only approved apps are going to be available in there. Make sure that you don't just say no to all apps, because you might miss some of those critical ones for your organization. Do you need meeting capabilities? This comes into the voice side of Teams and the calling aspects. We often forget these sides because they're not, while they're collaboration, we think of them automatically as enterprise capabilities that are offered to us. But in some licensing, those capabilities require extra money, either purchasing extra calling plans, international calling capabilities, going through different providers. So think about what you need in that area if your license covers it, and also make sure that you have a professional to help implement that correctly and to help fine-tune some of those things that you might need. And then one of the other things we want to think about is what permissions people need to have. So while roles come with different capabilities, and we'll talk about some of those, what you allow users to do inside of Teams, what they should have access to out of the box, and how you can configure it are also going to be very important. And one that's not on here, that is a little bit obscure because it's not the platform itself, is infrastructure. So in order for users to have a good experience on Teams, they need a specific set of infrastructure that is up to date and able to handle the workloads that you're going to put through Teams, whether that is having enough bandwidth through your internet connection, or if that's upgrading your Windows operating system to Windows 10 if you're still on an older operating system, having Office 365 Pro Plus. Think about how all of these different things help your users have good experiences. If your bandwidth isn't up to date, your call quality and some of the things you're trying to do in Teams, like sharing screens or the video or even sharing the new background capabilities, may not be available to you. Just a couple things to keep in mind as we move forward. So let's talk about permissions. Permissions vary between different roles within your organization, and the Teams administrator has the ability to go back and alter the permissions that are available for any type of role. But some of the generic ones that you're going to have out of the box, team owners have the ability to go ahead and create teams and channels, provided that you have self-service provisioning turned on. Anybody can participate in those private chats, those channel conversations. They can install apps within their team that will get added in as tabs up at the upper top. They can share files. Those files get stored inside of SharePoint, inside their document library. They can invite other people into teams if there's private teams, and they can even change the team permissions. That is something that is very unique to the team owners. They can change those permissions at a later time. And then they have the ability, just like anyone, to go ahead and handle or mention either the team itself, the channel, or even an individual within the organization that is in that team regarding a conversation. And they have the ability to archive when possible as well. Team members are the second level that we have available to us as far as permissions are concerned. Team members have significantly less permissions, but not necessarily any less important of permissions. They can still create teams and channels. They can participate in those private chats and channel conversations, share files and chat about files. They still have the ability to install apps and tabs and bots that will either, be called using the at mentions, such as applications like Poly, or they'll be placed in a tab as well. And they can find and join public teams. Only public teams are going to be searchable and able for anyone to just join on their own. Private teams are going to require that people are invited to that team. So be very careful on which one you create at the beginning. And they have the ability to go ahead and view the organizational chart. Okay. Guest members kind of create a really unique circumstance for a team, because guest members are individuals that are outside of your organization that are invited with permission to basically become a member of a team or channel that are in there. So they have the ability to create a channel. They cannot provision new teams within your environment, and they can only have access to the content that is specified in their permission level. Okay, they can create private chats and conversations, and they can share content within the channel, such as files, and you can invite them from a school or work account, and they have the ability to edit or delete their messages. They can't create new teams, they can't create private teams, they can't create many of the other things that are available inside of regular member or team ownership capabilities. And one important thing is that guest members, unlike regular team members, also do not have access to the rest of your environment. They cannot get into, other teams. They cannot, get into SharePoint or your intranet. They're only going to have access to specific teams and channels that you have provisioned for them. Okay. Then we have external members. So external members are invited at a tenant level. And what external members are is that it's allowing access to people from a domain. So say I wanted to allow people from contoso.com to be able to find me from their team's environment to either start a private chat or to start a meeting or a call. They can absolutely do that. In order to do that, though, Teams Admin Center has to be in there configured to allow for external access. Okay. Now, it's important to note that external access does not mean that people can search within your environment. They can find the content that you have in your environment. It is strictly allowing that federation to exist so that you can contact people and find people that are also using Teams. One important thing to note about external access is there is a difference between allowing external domains and blocking external domains. So if you allow external domains, it means that you are allowing every domain to be able to find you. So whether it was Microsoft.com or Staples or Contoso, the UN as a reference. It means that anybody can come and find you. When you are blocking domains, when you are allowing domains, everyone is blocked except for the people that you have specifically allowed. When you are blocking domains, it means that everybody is allowed with the exception of the domains that you do not want to have access. So if I wanted to allow access to Microsoft but not Contoso, I would specifically block Contoso so that those users would not be able to contact any of the members within our organization. Okay, so allowed means I'm specifically giving permission to specific domains. Blocked means I am denying permission to specific domains. So roles and responsibilities. This is a really, really important concept that we need to grasp, because if you don't have the right people and the right seat on the bus, then the bus may not get where you want to go, and you may not get everything covered that's really vital to the success of your rollout. Okay. So some of the roles we want to talk about are going to be your executive sponsors, your managers, and your champions. Notice I didn't say end users. End users are going to be using the platform, but these are the critical roles that are going to drive success with governance and your rollout of teams within your organization. Okay. So let's talk about the executive sponsor. The executive sponsor is often the one who makes the decision to switch from one platform to Teams. Or they're the person who approved the funding for the project, and they usually have the final say in what platform is going to be used within the organization. Most of the time, that initiative is driven by a financial need or a need to move from legacy systems, or a licensing perspective where licensing is coming due for an external system that you don't want to renew licensing for, and therefore there's a migration to Teams that happens. This is a really important person to keep updated with the highlights of the projects and to understand what's going on in the organization and where some pain points are. And they need to understand the value of what Teams is going to provide. You know, the ability to help save time on management, helping save cost, those real tangible items that have a real impact in the organization that teams can help with. Those are the things that you want to make sure that the executive sponsor is aware of and can help champion your project for. Then we have our managers. So managers are going to actually drive the adoption and implementation of teams within your organization. They're responsible for maintaining and keeping the service running, whether that is IT or just the general manager of a department. You know, how their team is going to be run, how their people are going to use teams to either use it for projects or for, you know, live events later. They will be the people who help determine what those governance policies are regarding use are in the organization. They will be the ones who help create that governance plan. And they're also going to be the people who help determine who the right roles and responsibilities are going to be for the different levels of people who have access within the team, whether that should be team owners or members or your champions or your executives. They may not have, you know, say in who the administration or support staff are, but those critical roles within the business, the manager is going to be a very important person to help drive the success of teams within your organization. Okay. Then we have our champions. Our champions are really those power users. They're those early adopters who usually understand technology very fast. They're the people that, you know, when we were allowed to go back into the offices, would, you know, always be the people, you know, helping others, you know, with questions that they had, or how do I, or how did you figure this out? Those are going to be your champions, and identifying those individuals early on is going to be crucial to the success of teams and ongoing. They're the ones that you want to make sure understand what your governance plans are, so that they know what guidelines to stay in and what they can do and what they can't do, so that when they're helping others, they also help drive that governance back and through the organization from the bottom up. So we have 4 types of administrator roles for teams. And all these roles can be configured by the global admin, and they live and through the team's admin center. Okay, so the primary role that you're going to see is going to be the team service administrator. They're the ones who actually manage the service. They get the alerts. They keep everything up and running. And the important thing is they manage the Microsoft 365 groups. So when your teams are created and you have groups on the back end, they're the person who helps manage those and the SharePoint sites that are associated with it. So really important to understand that role. Your communications administrator is going to manage all the calling and meeting features within the team service. This person in the past may have been responsible for your Skype for Business rollouts or Link before that, if we're going back far enough. They're that person who's really going to understand the voice and meeting side of teams. Really crucial person to have within your organization. And it's okay for the service administrator to fill all of these roles, but in a larger organization, you may have more specialized administrators. You're going to have your support engineers that can troubleshoot issues with teams using advanced tools. That just means they have a little bit more tools at their access that are available through Microsoft to kind of help them. And then you have your regular support specialist, which also will be helping with communication. All right. So compliance and security. Okay. Really super important when it comes to teams. So there's a couple primary scenarios that I want to talk to you about. And the first one is legal hold. In order to do legal hold, you have to configure it in the team's admin center under eDiscovery, which means you have to be a team administrator at a minimum to be able to configure these policies. But each one here puts different areas and different aspects of your conversations, your chats, your teams, your channels on hold for eDiscovery purposes. So your one-on-one chats or your many or group chats, your private channel conversations, those all get put on hold using Exchange through the mailbox. Okay, all your chat conversations live in Exchange. Really important. Okay. Your channel chats, though, actually get stored back to Exchange, but in the team's mailbox, not the individual user. Okay. The Microsoft Teams content, so your files, all like that, is going to be stored within that SharePoint site inside of that library. Okay. And your private channels have their own site collection, so they are stored in a dedicated SharePoint private channel in SharePoint. And your private content that you may have had is stored in OneDrive for Business site for the user. Retention policies are the second one. So e-discovery and legal holds are really important. So are being able to retain content, especially if you have compliance reasons for that. So some of the things that you can actually configure, and that the configuration for this is not done in the Teams Admin Center, but in the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center. So you have to make sure your licensing gives you permissions to that capability in order to take advantage of these. But you can retain all your team chats or channel messages for a specific duration, and then choose what happens to them. You can choose to delete it after that time period, or you can delete them after a specific duration without having to retain them even longer. So those are your options, kind of returning retention policies at a high level. There's a lot more to it, but those are the basic options that you have available to you. Some of the limitations. While retention policies are great in being able to keep your data and know where it's stored, there is a couple caveats to think about. So Teams does require a retention policy that's separate from other workloads, which means like if you have a retention policy for content in SharePoint, you also have to create another one for Teams. It is a different workload. Okay, so things like Teams chats or channel messages, it's why you can't include team org-wide retention policies, because they have to be broken up to those separate workloads individually. Okay. At the current moment, private channel messages are not supported for retention policies. Okay. And it doesn't currently support the advanced retention settings, such as the ability to apply a policy to content and contains keywords or sensitive information. So you can apply, you can understand sensitivity labels and things like that if you're working in advanced threat protection and in security and compliance. But right now we don't support those yet in Teams. Okay. And just to understand, like, expired messages and things like that, the time frame is slightly longer, for some of these. So Teams can take up to 3 to 7 days to clean up expired messages, even though the policy will go ahead and, help clear up the chat and channel messages when the retention period ends. So you just have to understand that, even though it might be, deleted, it technically could be recovered for up to like an additional 3 to 7 days, just in case. And the last part that we really want to take care of is how we get our users on the right track. How do we make sure they don't go off the rails? Some high-level things, we want to make sure you create your champions program, get them involved, make sure that they understand the guidance rules and governance rules that you're putting in place, and how to engage other people in the organization. You can do this by either creating a team for these members, you can create a Yammer group, a SharePoint site, anything that allows people to communicate with each other freely, exchange ideas, and be creative. Okay. You want to create your governance plan. This governance plan needs to define what the purposes of Teams is in your organization, the rules regarding how provisioning is going to work, the roles and responsibilities of people. If you're going to have policies regarding, retention or compliance, the need for recertification of a team after certain times. Are you going to use Teams templates or custom apps? All of that needs to be defined in your governance plan when you're thinking about rolling that out. That can be a living governance plan that lives inside of a SharePoint site so that it's accessible to everyone. We want to make sure that we don't create those 70-page documents that are shelfware. We want people to be able to have access and easily have it updated as well. Define your use cases. why are you using Teams, and who are the roles and members that they're going to be needing to use it. And we'll talk a second about that. Define who your champions and your early adopters are. Set up ways to get feedback from people, whether that's setting up a feedback channel in a team, or if that's setting up, a Microsoft form that someone can fill out and provide feedback. You want to make sure that you're consistently getting feedback from people to help improve their experiences. And then make sure you get your support staff on board. Anytime you roll out a new technology, you need a way to support it within the organization. So help get them on board and get them trained up. When we talk about business scenarios, how to think about a business scenario is that, what role am I? So someone who works in finance, maybe I want to create a report using Excel. I'm successful when, define your success criteria. I'm successful when I can create the report, co-authoring with another colleague, save the report, upload it into Teams, and everyone will have access and a conversation around it. If you can define those scenarios, you're going to have a better understanding of what roles and how to implement Teams within your organization, and be able to kind of mold it to your needs. Okay. Onboarding our support staff. We talked about this just a second ago. Are they ready to go? Do they have all the information do they need? Do they understand known issues? And are they able to, be successful? I've included a few resources here that you can click on later and go find. But each one of these will help and brand new fresh admin or support individual be able to be successful in their mission as well. Okay. We want to make sure that we define our outcomes. So organizationally, are you looking to provide cultural transformation or talent acquisition or employee retention, or, say operational agility? Are these things that, are the outcomes you want to achieve by, putting Teams out there? Culturally, is it about employee sentiment or, employee recommendations? Individual things, can be like the ability to use a specific desired tool or productivity, being able to create ideas and idea generation. And those tangible things, those things that are really important to the senior management are, cost savings, retirement of legacy systems, data security, revenue generation. These are all things that, go into thinking about what kind of outcomes you want to achieve by using Teams, and help guide your users into those goals. Okay. So with that, I realize it was a very fast presentation today. We only had a quick 30 minutes to talk. But if you'd like to learn more, have any questions about any of the content that we've talked about today, or how to become that Pied Piper for your organization, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out. Again, you can reach me by Twitter, email, my blog, or even reach out to Cloudway as well. With that, thank you very much, and looking forward to hearing from all of you soon.
Thank you for being a part of the Galactic Collaboration Summit. Join the community and meet in-person world-class Microsoft and MVP speakers this autumn in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, Germany, with 15 full-day tutorials and over 150 Microsoft 365 and Azure sessions at the combined European Collaboration Summit and European Cloud Summit from 26 to 28 October 2020. Community rocks.